Well, hello, 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 and here we are yet again talking about the Northern Ireland Protocol. This time, we are going to, I think it's the Irish Times, and asking, I think, the question on everyone's lips, which is, what is David Frost's next move? And even before we get into this, you have to ask the question, why on earth would someone basically a week before you go on like a major break, because remember, our politicians are off until at least the end of this month, so they ain't coming back to Parliament anytime soon. And remember, the Northern Ireland Protocol is causing huge problems in Northern Ireland, and is essentially what you are going to start seeing down south and at ports for stuff and goods crossing into Europe soon. Now, why would you do this? Because it doesn't make sense to say, I mean, imagine if you were in business and your boss comes along and goes, right, we're going to do this massive project, and essentially it's all going to start tomorrow. Oh, but by the way, I'm off. And I guarantee there are going to be some people who have been in that situation and gone, yeah, it was an absolute hell week. Everything that could have gone wrong possibly went wrong. When we needed the boss, we couldn't get a hold of him. This is exactly what is going on right now at the border. We don't know what David Frost's going to do. He's got, I think, potentially 4 options, which we'll get to in a bit, but none of these are any sort of risk to either the EU or Ireland. They all carry consequences for the UK. And I think Frost knows this. And my opinion for some time has been, if you remember, again, a couple of months ago back now, the disastrous Norway negotiations that went on, where Norway came back and said, oh yes, the UK has said that they are not interested in talking to the EU at least until 2022, at least, until next year. And I think this is because they have made the political calculation that they cannot be seen to do any sort of capitulation. Because remember, to make any of the situations, shall we say, better, not just in Northern Ireland, but for the rest of the UK has to accept regulations, has to accept European Court of Justice jurisdiction, has to accept a load of things that it was when it was part of the EU. And they know that will be seen as some sort of capitulation. So they've made the political calculation that at least for the first year, they can get away with doing all this stuff, causing all these problems for UK businesses. I think they've made the political calculation of, maybe next year, we're going to start following some EU rules and regulations, which might mean for a lot of UK businesses, they might now really seriously breathe a massive sigh of relief, which makes it easier for them to now trade with the UK, well, not with the EU. And I think they know that they've gone, right, we can only do this for a year. So that's why I think that's happened. But anyway, let's get into this article. But before we do get into that article, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there is a link to my Patreon page and a donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me a coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel that way. So let's get on with this then. So Ireland's summer holidays shivers are nothing compared to the political chill descending over the Northern Ireland Protocol. As one EU diplomat puts it, trust is at zero, and there's still further to fall. So how much worse could things get in the autumn when a series of grace periods on checks on goods moving between Britain and Northern Ireland are due to end? The UK government has called for, quote, substantial changes to the protocol. In practice, it is a fundamental renegotiation that will almost certainly will not happen. So let's assume we don't get an agreement in September to extend the grace periods long enough to agree permanent arrangements which best meet the needs for Northern Ireland businesses and consumers. How might London play the situation tactically, and how should Dublin and the EU capitals and Washington respond? Because remember, Washington has a massive part to play in this. Of course, the US was very fundamental in helping to get the Good Friday / Belfast peace agreement over the line. So they've got a lot invested in this as well. So experience suggests we can make 4 assumptions about how David Frost will approach talks. Firstly, he will ask for much more than the EU will ever concede. Secondly, he will try and look credible in threatening to act unilaterally if the EU doesn't move far enough. Thirdly, unlike his predecessor, Michael Gove, he is prepared to use Northern Ireland as leverage to open up negotiations. The only way to force the EU towards substantial renegotiation is if the Northern Ireland Assembly votes to exit the protocol's trading agreements. The earliest this could actually happen, though, is late 2024. But if the Assembly election next year return an anti-protocol majority, the EU would be on notice that the fundamental question of whether checks take place was back in play. And if we take the UK government at face value, therefore maximising any anti-protocol unionist vote next May, it is in their short-term interests. So firstly, Frost's negotiating position has plenty of fat. The gap between initial asks and what Boris Johnson accepted at the end of the withdrawal agreement, and of course the future trade deal, was big. With the protocol, my guess is that the UK government would be, quote, happy with a de facto standstill, including grace periods, which could get them through to the potential next general election, probably in 2023. So with that in mind, what tactical options will Frost be weighing up? So 1, extend the grace periods unilaterally. We've already seen him do this. And this could be a very open-ended or just running until, say, March 2022 to maximize the protocol issue in the Northern Ireland Assembly election. The EU, if prepared to countenance extensions, might consider within a rollover of a year to at least take us past those Assembly elections. If the UK government's aim is really to prolong a standstill, Frost will be thinking about how he can manage any likely EU conditions around credible commitments to finally implement the protocol. That would be a big step down from the stated aims of the fundamental renegotiation. 2, of course, is the Internal Market Bill 2.0. If the government is, or at least wants to look serious about unilaterally rewriting the protocol, it probably needs new legislative powers, as was with the original intent of the Internal Market Bill. This would serve a dual purpose. First, rallying Conservative backbenchers and Johnson's wider electoral coalition, and showing the EU that London is prepared to play hardball. 3, of course, just triggering Article 16, and they have threatened to do this, as Boris has said. This would be seen internationally as a sign that negotiation has ended, and that the UK could just take the initial step and formally notifying the EU under Article 1 of the Protocol Annex 7 that this is considering triggering Article 16 without even actually doing so. Frost might actually couple this with some sort of new deadline to try and pressure the EU. But even this would raise the diplomatic tension hugely in Washington as well as in Brussels. Frost is in charge of negotiations, but ultimately the final call is Boris Johnson's. So what will he weigh with? Again, experience suggests that he will drive the car to the edge, but won't do a Thelma and Louise right off the edge. He wants the friction with Washington to be manageable, but still a US trade deal. And ultimately, anyway, this is the side of a UK election. And it probably won't be much of a carrot for him. He wants what he really wants, of course, is to count. What really counts, of course, is domestic politics in England, not Northern Ireland, and in particular, avoiding any economic disruption in the blue/red wall seat in the Midlands and the North that is big enough to affect his chances of winning them most the next time around. And I think ultimately that is what potentially Johnson is trying to do. I've said before, he's got this balancing act, but like I say, if you've read the news, you know the trickle that is being slowly coming in about the economic damage that is being done, especially in the red wall seats. This isn't going to be this is not going to be very well received when people realize that actually it's Brexit's fault. There are a lot of people denying that at the moment, but no, they can't keep on, shall we say, closing their eyes forever. So at the moment, Ireland and the EU shouldn't panic. Whichever option Frost go for, all of them carry risks for London. Extending the grace periods with clear signals about eventual implementation will only accelerate responsible business operations under the broad protocol terms. An internal market bill will almost certainly wouldn't get past the House of Lords before the next general election. The NI Assembly elections are very likely to return a majority in favour of making the protocol work rather than risk the intrusive land border. And triggering Article 16 is the biggest diplomatic risk of all, just ahead of COP26 and with Johnson seeking validation of global Britain. It also allows the EU to retaliate and take proportional rebalancing measures immediately without the need for arbitration. And above all, EU leaders should consider whether they want to fight this out now. What is their plan B if London cannot be forced to implement the protocol fully this side of a UK general election? What would this be from some sort of standstill? In my view, London's real aim be so bad if it came with some concrete acceptance that the protocol is in large part here to stay. In that scenario, ongoing business adaptation would mean that there would be very little in commercial terms left to fight about when the next UK government takes office. And that is really the next point, because you've heard a lot of talk in this article about the potential of a next general election and how much this could come in. Because remember, this will play on Boris really bad if Labour come back and say, oh, Boris, you said you'd get Brexit done, but Brexit is far from done. Look at all these problems that your precious, oven-ready deal has created. We've still got problems in Northern Ireland. It's causing all these problems in the northeast, and down south as well. Look at all these lorry lines that you said wouldn't happen. Here they are. And that would play incredibly badly for Boris at a next general election. You've also got to consider that if the Conservatives do get rid of the Fixed Term Parliament Act, that means that Boris could trigger an election whenever he wants. So we could be looking at a 2023 election rather than a 2024 election, potentially, if that happens. And like I say, there is tons of stuff that could go into play between now and then. And even if they do get rid of the Fixed Term Parliament Act, maybe we could see a 2022 election. Again, it entirely depends when Boris Johnson will think that he can call that election to his biggest advantage, because that is what the Fixed Term Parliament Act was put in place to stop. But with that gone, Boris can call one whenever he wants. And of course, we've been hearing some interesting maneuvers, of course, about Rishi Sunak making some maneuvers. So this could be a very quiet summer, but obviously it doesn't stop the rumor mill from ticking over. But autumn could be very interesting with Boris's and Sunak's budget coming out, and how hard, shall we say, the Northern MPs will fight against what is basically more austerity, because Boris Johnson said he would not countenance austerity. Austerity was dead. It was a dirty word. It's gone. It's gone forever. But here he is bringing it back in this budget. And as we've always said, Boris is walking a very tightrope, managing this very fragile voter coalition. The more he appeals to his Northerners, the more he loses his Southerners. And the more he appeals to his Southerners, the more he loses his Northerners. He has to walk a very tightrope, and he can't keep that up together, especially with his current formation of his Tory party, because both his, the Northern Research Group, the ERG, the COVID Recovery Group, all want different things. And he can't keep saying no forever and offering fluff. He will eventually have to offer something concrete, but that's not what Boris Johnson does. He does not make the hard choices. He leaves that up to someone else. So, as always, thanks very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, there are links down below to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can, well, buy me a coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next